Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Gates, Admiral Mullen, thank you for joining us today, and thank you so much for your service. I want to begin by stating what the Obama administration has said, and that is their effort is to persuade Gaddafi to relinquish power. Under that scenario, what happens if Gaddafi stays in power? And if he does, what's the contingency plan if he continues in that role?
I think we have considered the possibility of this being a stalemate and being a drawn-out affair. It's hard for me to, unless there's some kind of a significant change in behavior in terms of his own people and so on, it's hard for me to imagine circumstances in which we would be content to deal or tolerate a government that still had Gaddafi at its head. And I think it's hard to forecast what directions this business may take. But I think that the administration would have a hard time accepting a government with Gaddafi as the head in terms of dealing with it.
Okay. So at this point, though, there's no contingency plan if he does continue to remain in power?
Other than keeping the pressure on.
Okay. And the administration has said, too, that absolutely not going to deploy ground forces there. But as we've watched 10 years of war in Afghanistan and Iraq and know that as we pursue operations there with precision strike and the use of air power, we talk about that being used to prepare the battle space and that coordinated effort there. Under that scenario, is it correct that we have nobody on the ground in Libya in any way, shape, or form directing or coordinating these airstrikes like we have used tactically in Iraq and Afghanistan?
That's correct.
Okay. Are you satisfied with the effectiveness of that, then, without us being able to direct those operations like we do in other theaters?
The Chairman's better able to speak to that than I am. But I think there's some, there's some loss with not having somebody on the ground. But I think that it's more than offset by the effectiveness of what we are doing and by not having anybody there.
I want to talk a little bit, too, about the no-fly zone and looking at deployment of a Marine Expeditionary Unit there in the Mediterranean and looking at how the Sixth Fleet is currently being deployed. The UN Security Council Resolution 1973 and 1970 requires inspection of all vessels and aircraft en route to and from Libya if there's a reason to believe that the cargo contains items that are prohibited in Resolution 1970. Under that scenario, what role do you see the U.S. Navy and the Marine Corps assuming in that area, enforcing those elements of the UN Resolution 1973 and 1970?
I would see it, again, NATO's part of the mission that NATO's assumed is the arms embargo. So we would certainly support it in terms of ships that would be under the NATO chain of command to support that. And I would also note that this particular resolution is the first one that I'm aware of that allows us to actually do this at sea, to board whether we're invited or not. And that's a significant upgrade, if you will, of being able to enforce something like the arms embargo.
Will that stretch our force capacity as far as our naval forces, especially with where we need them elsewhere with, say, the Fifth Fleet and now engaging the Sixth Fleet in an expanded role?
Well, no, sir. I don't think substantially. In addition to focus on Libya, this is a part of the world that also has a significant amount of turmoil throughout it. So having a presence of naval capability there in the Mediterranean, I think, is a wise decision.
Looking at these scenarios, it's great to have that ability to board these vessels at sea, but let's face it, there's also a contingency that some of them get ashore and some of these materials get ashore. What would be the U.S. role if we were to find that out, that under this resolution there was a violation with these supplies going ashore?
Well, I don't know if the implication of the question is would we go ashore. The answer would be no. I mean, it is... and this question has come up a lot. I mean, it's zero boots on the ground, none, with respect to that. I actually have a reasonable amount of confidence, certainly from the arms embargo standpoint, that that we can enforce this in a way that is maybe not exactly perfect, but it's a very strong embargo that we might be, I think we're going to be able to significantly impact his ability to break it, although that certainly is a possibility as well.
Thank you. Mr. Cooper.